Hey everyone, welcome to the Trade to Black podcast here on the Benzinga TV network. I'm your host, Chad Dales, CEO of TDR, the Dales Report, where we on this podcast are going to give you a comprehensive look inside the cannabis, psychedelic, and crypto industry. And as mentioned, provide you with the latest market coverage on what we're seeing today and what you should know and why it's important to you. So let's get right into it as we welcome in our co-host, Benjamin A. Smith. He is the lead financial writer of the Dales Report, former day trader and analyst. Good to see you, sir. How's the day?
Day was great. Quite a day in some of the verticals that we cover. We'll get into that in a sec, but some wild swings in volatility.
Seeing a meltdown? Is it a meltdown, boys?
I wouldn't call it a meltdown. I would just say there's some downward pressure on the sector. It's looking a little bleak to say the least. I think MSOS finished the day down 8%.
8%?
And then you've got Canopy down 14%, and Consortium and Forefront are the only green stocks on my screen.
Yeah, and for the audience,
Verano too, actually. I think with the CBOE move.
Verano finished the day down 3%.
Yeah,
it did.
Yeah, wow. We'll get into that, but let's welcome in for our audience that doesn't know our second host, or should say third host, Anthony Vera, millennial entrepreneur and TDR contributor. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. It's good. Glad we're getting this show kicked off, and we picked a fucking real good day to get this. Or sorry, I won't start dropping F-bombs this early. We picked a good day to get this going.
All right,
we got plenty to talk about.
We'll break this podcast into 3 segments. We're going to give you news, daily movers, and just a quick recap of basically what we talked about. But let's dive into our first segment, which is Into the Wire, basically featuring the biggest headlines about cannabis, psychedelics, and crypto. So we begin in Toronto, Canada today, where I just actually flew back from, was down there today. Verano Holdings, who became the latest Tier 1 MSO company to list on a Tier 1 exchange. This one, CBOE Canada, which now welcomes them into the CBOE ecosystem, which Aaron Miles told me is a great, positive for the company should we see rescheduling at some point in 2023. But nevertheless, this is a great move for them right now. But this is a Tier 1 company. We're starting to see, Anthony, more and more Tier 1 companies listing on these global exchanges. I think a good move for Verano and a sign of things, I think, to come for the overall industry, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think Verano is one of the best names in the space. I'd probably put them as like a top 3 company, especially amongst the Tier 1s. This is just priming the pump for uplisting when we're actually on the back of any sort of regulatory change. This is good. It solves custody issues to an extent. They're now off of the CSE and onto the CBOE with global access to investors as well as global exchanges.
26 countries like that.
Yeah, this is all a net positive. When I tweeted out this morning, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is a nothing burger. This is a nothing burger." It was like, well, you guys are looking too short-sighted if you don't think this is nothing. This is a step in the right direction. And like we've always said, comprehensive versus incremental. I'll take incremental these baby steps forward. As far as I'm concerned, it's all progress.
Yeah. Ben, this eventually is going to give them access on one exchange to investors in North America, Europe, and Australia, which is big markets, obviously, for cannabis investors, but access and transparency to major institutions, which they're definitely going to see. But a big move. This is the largest issuer in CBOE history. So I think it's a big win for, obviously, the exchange and I think for the company based on what they're going to have access to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes investors who are in the shares already, they're looking for immediate moves, but I think this is incrementally positive for sure. It's not just the ease of U.S. uplisting when that becomes federally able. It's also things like small things that regular investors may not see, like CBOE Canada has a match now system that facilitates 15% of all volume in Canada.
Yeah.
So it has enhanced access to ATS, which is alternative trading systems, and also dark pools that the CSE probably doesn't have access to. So they have different ways to facilitate increased participation, investor participation with index funds and so forth, and the things I just mentioned. So I think along with the ease of uplisting when that becomes federally able, I think this is a very good move for Verano Holdings, and it was holding up, pretty good today, better than the rest of the shares. I guess it dropped late day, but a good move overall, I think.
Timing is everything, and if we do see rescheduling, this is so turnkey. And even if you have a 2 to 3, 4 month window of opportunity where other companies trying to list, let's say on a NASDAQ or a NYSE, we all know in this industry, 2 to 3, 4 months is a long time, because we know that these stocks will rip if we get some sort of announcement pertaining to rescheduling, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is all posturing for that ultimate move on the backs of rescheduling.
Yeah.
If and when it comes.
One thing I learned today from Aaron Miles, he was telling me that about the transparency part, about like seeing who's shorting these stocks. A lot of it's international. 97% of this industry right now, 97% is retail.
Yeah. I mean, but that's
a huge number. I know it was big. I just didn't realize it was 97%.
It's the custody issue. If you're a financial institution, or if you're a fund, if you're a financial anybody outside of a retail investor, you have a compliance department.
Yeah.
They tell you what you can and cannot buy. I mean, I have friends that work for investment banks that can't even own cannabis stocks personally due to compliance issues.
Wow. That's about to change, though, don't you think?
Yeah. Eventually. I mean, I've got buddies that have been trying to buy IPR for the last 5 years, and they can't. Simply because it won't pass muster in their compliance department.
So all in all, the takeaway from this, good move, obviously, for Verano. Yes, guys?
Yeah, net positive. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's switch now to overseas, Germany, where the federal parliament is set to deliberate on a bill proposed by the federal government on controlled cannabis usage and related provisions on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, which at the time of this podcast is today. Furthermore, the move suggests significant shifts in the country's stance towards the substance, which is currently illegal for recreational uses. So, Ben, break this down on what's going on here, and most importantly, what it means.
Yeah, this means that greater changes are coming, and the recreational cannabis can incrementally come to Germany. So I think it's a positive on this end, and it will help companies such as Rescheduling Holdings, which has exposure there, and others that are prospective companies that are going to list as well.
Anthony, step in the right direction, don't you think? But at the same time, too, is this moving fast enough, or does it still seem like it's moving at a snail's pace?
I mean, it's moving relatively slowly. We've been talking about Germany for 5-6 years now, but I mean, what really caught my eye on this and why I wanted to cover it on the show is because of what the Bundestag actually said. So they basically came out and said, why are we going to fast track regulation? Because people are smoking weed anyway, despite it being illegal right now. They were like, people need a tested, regulated framework to consume cannabis.
Yeah.
People that are buying it on the black market, they don't know the THC count. They don't know if it's been tested. They don't know if it has pesticides and heavy metals. And I've always been a pretty vocal advocate of that is the biggest health risk for the cannabis industry, is people using black market product and not having any idea what the hell is in it. You think the guy out in Homestead that's growing black market cannabis is going to care about his consumers, spraying it with pesticides, heavy metals, testing it? No, it's not. I mean, you do put yourself in harm's way when you're consuming products from the black market or products from the street. It's as simple as that.
How about this story this morning with Verano? They actually went and looked at, not as a company, but one of the executives was actually in Manhattan and went to one of the illegal dispensaries there. And the place had been raided a half an hour before he got there. So the person was working the dispensary, said, I do have some product, went out back and came out back and brought out all this product in a garbage bag.
I believe it. I mean, I don't buy black market cannabis.
No,
I don't consume it. I mean, everything that I buy is through dispensaries. It's regulated and tested. And that's for a peace of mind. That being said, I mean, there have been hiccups in the regulated markets. I mean, you see cannabis also sometimes needs to be irradiated until it's actually approved to go to the point of sale. And it's not always the cleanest process or product, but there's still guidelines that are in place, and I at least know what I'm consuming.
Well, let's face it, as this industry grows, there's going to be a new audience, and maybe the people that have been consumers for a long time lean to the black market. But if you're going to grow, I think brand recognition, and as you said, you want to know, especially in this day and age, people 100% consumers are going to want that. But do we have any trend reports on how like the legal market is trending upwards versus, say, black market? Because black market is often said to be lower cost, runs a tight business, but how the overall legal market is, in some ways competing against the black market. Like, are they winning the war, so to speak?
Are you talking about Germany or are you talking about the US?
US.
Or Canada?
US. What were you going to say, Ben?
Go ahead.
I was going to say we have data in Canada that's come out. I know legalization it's 5 years into legalization. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But when it started out in October of 2018, so in the fourth quarter, the legal market only owned 22% of that market share. Now today, in the latest quarter, according to StatsCan data, that is 71%. So
Wow.
we've seen over a threefold increase. So in the US, it may be a little different, but I think the trends in states that have
For
gone
sure.
legal are pretty similar.
Good numbers, Ben. Okay, elsewhere, let's focus on Forefront Ventures. They made news today. This is a company, I think, they're vertically integrated, multi-state cannabis operator and retailer. And today they announced it has entered into a $10 million senior secured credit facility agreement with Alt Debt 2 LP, who is the lender and affiliate of Altmore Capital. So the actual money that's being raised, the focus is to build out their retail operations in Illinois. And Anthony, I got to outline this. Like, this is a company that's getting more and more attention ever since this HHS announcement was announced in early September. But a company that's moved a little bit, raising money, no easy task, obviously, during these times, but definitely a company that more and more people are talking about recently.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to see the coupon on this facility that they entered into with the lender. I think it gets them to about 10 dispensaries in the Illinois market at the end of this, once it's exhausted. So, I mean, that's a healthy footprint in the Illinois market. That being said, I mean, I was looking into them today, and I mean, from a market cap perspective, sitting at 145 million, sitting at $145 million market cap. I don't really know how that's justified when they've only got, I think, two dispensaries built out in Illinois. They've got operations in Washington and California, which for me, those are nothing burger states. And I mean, they might be a little bit rich compared to their peers, all things considered.
So you think that market cap is aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't touch the stock. I mean, I would bet on some of the other ones that are a little bit more risky in the tier 2, tier 3 space. But I mean, it's catching headlines, and the stock does pop on news.
Yeah. Ben, you know much about the company?
It's not a company I follow extremely closely, but it is on the radar. It is on portfolio watch.
Anthony from New Lake's actually in the chat. He said it's a 15.5% coupon, according to the press release. So apparently I need to put my glasses on when I'm reading things.
Anthony, good to see you, sir. And by the way, if anyone wants to know, log on to the Dales Report Twitter handle tonight. We're going to be doing Twitter space with Anthony, along with Nicholas Vida from formerly Columbia Care, now the Cannabis Company Holdings. Is that how I pronounce it? Yes, the Cannabis Company Holdings, and as well as Kyle Kazan from Glasshouse. So that should be an interesting conversation as we talk about branding, we talk about 280E, we talk about rescheduling, and if obviously 280E goes away, how do lending companies like New Lake strategically go about investing within the company? But should be an interesting conversation. Let's now switch to headline 4, small pharma. Basically, big announcement here today. As last month, as we know, Cybin made the announcement they were acquiring small pharma, which many in the industry deemed as a great announcement and really put Cybin, I think, arguably as the leader in this space. Well, today they announced a final order of the Supreme Court of British Columbia, where they approved the previously announced plan of arrangement under Division 5 of Part 9 of the Business Corporations Act. So in a nutshell, is this now official? This is done. And if so, does this make Cybin, Ben, the, leader in DMT research within the industry?
Yes, it does. That's the short answer. And that's what made this announcement significant. Of course, we all knew the acquisition was probably going to take place. There was no reason for it not to, or for regulators to step in and say no. So now that it's official, now it's also official that Cybin has the best, the most preeminent DMT psychedelic program in the space right now, bar none. Before the acquisition, Cybin and Small Pharma were sort of 1 and 2. Small Pharma was actually a little bit ahead of Cybin with their phase 2A results, which were home run back in February. So now that that's consolidated and amalgamated, Cybin takes over that program, and they can sort of, intermesh their own program, which is itself pretty exciting, into Cybin's, and now they're head and shoulders above the leader. So this is important because DMT is a very fast-acting psychedelic. Its offset is within 30 minutes of taking it. It's very potent. And a lot of people are excited for this because if it works as the early data suggests, then this will be extremely valuable for outpatient therapy because the offset is so quick. You could
Yeah.
literally have therapy within 2 hours and be home and all fine after that. So
Yeah.
very exciting research.
This is the TDR Tradetoblack podcast on the Benzinga TV network. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Benjamin A. Smith and Anthony Verrill. Leave a comment below. What do you think of this announcement today? Is Cybin now classified as a leader in psychedelics? Do you agree with that? We'd love to hear more from you. This, let's face it, we outlined this, Anthony, in our newsletter where you can actually subscribe by going on to thedalesreport.com. But we've outlined this, a company, as we've said, Steve Cohen buying 18.95 million shares. Really, the sector has been hit so hard over the last 30, 45 days. It's been relatively flat, except for Cybin. It's, surged for a bit. It's flatlined recently, but still, this is a stock that was trading, I think, 35 cents Canadian. I don't know where it's trading at end of day today, but at one point it was up over 70 cents, was it not?
Yeah, it's down 6%. It's at 50 cents right now. So I mean, it's still up considerably off that 35 level on the back of the Steve Cohen announcement. And I mean, yeah, this is a net positive for it. This is a step in the right direction. They've got 003 data in the pipeline, I think, here in the next couple of weeks. And then it's, I don't want to say smooth sailing, but like Doug said, I mean, they're kind of out of the research phase. They're more so getting into the execution phase, which is really going to play into his strengths as CEO and the bench that they've built a human capital on the Cybin team.
Yeah, and they're going to have trial results phase 2 in December, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, that's right. The last patients have already been dosed, and it's our understanding that in this quarter, that data is going to come out. So we expect, or I expect, the announcement to move the stock in either direction depending on the veracity of the data.
And that IP they got, Ben, from Small Pharma, like, this is a great company. We couldn't believe with some of the results that they announced earlier this year and how the stock didn't move. But it appears that this company just ran basically out of money. But what an acquisition it is for Cybin. Many people liking this deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually bought shares after they released the data in February because the results were so potent. Now I end up not keeping the shares for all that long because the state of the market.
Yeah, I hear you.
Psychedelics, it just wasn't time for that. But the data itself was incredible, and Cybin gets to amalgamate this into their own program. And like I said, there's nobody close in this space, in the psychedelic space, for this sort of DMT program. So if it hits, it's going to be, they're positioned to be the preeminent player for this drug going forward.
Yeah, this is Into the Wire, where we outline all the headlines in cannabis and psychedelics today. Last thing I'm going to bring up, and actually something, I don't know if I should bring this up or not, but this week, as you touched on earlier, Ben, marked the 5-year anniversary that cannabis became federally legal in Canada. When we set aside, what's that?
Five years ago today. Yeah, the 18th.
Yeah.
Remember that? I think right after that day, everybody just started selling, didn't they?
But we're not here if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, as big of a joke as the Canadian market's been, like, Trudeau doesn't run on that ticket and Trudeau doesn't get this thing done, like, we're probably not having this conversation or being on the show right now.
Fair enough. And I think, to your point,
all things considered,
like, when we look at all the challenges aside from that, it's worth noting there are a few companies that have a bright future from Canada. We look at High Tide, you look at SNDL, Tilray, to some degree, obviously Canopy with what they've got planned in the, I think in the back door. Yeah, Canopy USA with the US market. But when I look at some of these numbers since 2018, as you are pointing out some numbers earlier, Ben, gross domestic product GDP has risen from 6.4 billion in 2018 to 10.8 billion today. We all know alcohol sales have flatlined while cannabis has steadily increased. 70% of consumed cannabis from legal sources, as opposed to 22%, as you said earlier, Ben, in the fourth quarter of 2018. So all in all, as much as it has this reputation of Canada of what not to do, I think that's news from 5 years ago, because there are some great companies that actually are stepping up, battle tested. The industry's growing, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. Obviously, it was off to a rocky start to begin with. There was several provinces that didn't have enough retail, specifically Ontario, the most populous province in Canada. And it took them a while to get enough retail footprint to service the entire province. Now they almost have a glut of retailers, and they're scaling back in some metro cities. But overall, cannabis accounts for 0.5% of the economy. So $1 out of every $200 spent in the Canadian economy is related to cannabis.
I like that.
I
It's a good
mean,
number.
well, it's a good yeah, it's a good number. I mean, it doesn't seem like an incredible number, but when you think about all the industry, oil and gas,
Yep.
all the textile industries and mining and so forth, it is a rather significant part of the economy. It's a small slice of it, but everything's going the right direction. Alcohol sales has flatlined during that time while it keeps growing. Now we're up over 10 billion from a $6 billion start. So I think, there's been a lot of challenges, profitability challenges with the pubcos in this country, but overall, I think it's been a success, a gradual success over time, although
Yeah.
there's still challenges for profitability for these companies, which is a material risk for the industry.
When we look back at that whole Canadian run from 5, 6, 7 years ago, you guys ran it in the early days. I was not. Anthony, I'll begin with you. Any stories that you can look back during that time that was just absolute euphoria, if you had to give one?
Actually, I got a chuckle yesterday. Matt Lammers who's a writer for MJ Biz.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. He wrote an article or he had a tweet about funded capacity in the Canadian market. And in 2016, 2017, every business was raising on funded capacity. So if you had $400 million in the bank, everyone was just assuming that you were going to be able to deploy that capital, build out that much infrastructure, and then you were going to generate this much revenue. Nobody actually sat there and was like, well, the Canadian market is infinitesimal compared to the global population. Like, where the hell are you planning to actually sell all of this cannabis? When you had T-God, Canopy, Aurora, Afria was like, I'm going to have 3 million square feet of grow, 2.5 million square feet of grow. It was fun.
And some
there were
real good product, right?
Yeah, I mean,
pretty bad.
Granted, I'm not gonna lie. So not to pump them up because they're a client of ours, but the TerraSend, the cookies and the Gauge pre-rolls that we had in Toronto last week were pretty damn good.
Were they?
Yeah, that's probably the best flower that I've smoked in Canada yet. And I mean, granted, my experience has been limited. Is usually I haven't been up there that much in the past couple of years, but those were pretty damn good products. But yeah, we could get into a lot of stories, to say the least, on the rise of the Canadian cannabis industry.
You know what? I can vouch for that, Anthony. I actually tried one of the pre-rolls that were there at one of the functions that TerraSend was holding before their investor day. And I actually wasn't expecting much because there was only about 15% THC. And I'm not a huge consumer. I'm definitely not an everyday consumer, but when I tried it, it hit the spot. So it's nice and smooth flower. Terps were apparent. So I commend TerraSend for that nice pre-roll product.
You crushed that calamari plate after too, didn't you, Ben?
Yes, but especially the chicken nuggets. I enjoyed those quite fondly. But it was a great event, great night, and always great to see Jason Weldon.
Like what they're doing. They cleaned up their debt first, got on the TSX first, and they've got quite the opportunity in some of the states that they're in, especially as we've highlighted in the past on our own YouTube channel, The Dales Report, how Michigan is a great opportunity for them. Okay, that concludes the first segment, which is Into the Wire, which outlines all the biggest headlines in both cannabis and psychedelics. If we missed anything, leave some comments below. We'd love to hear from you. We would not be here without you. So any information we may be missing, feel free to share, and we will make sure to reach out to our audience and bring back information that you want to know and learn. Okay, let's begin our next segment, which is our daily movers. We look at stocks that are moving either up or down, giving you comprehensive market coverage. So as I said off the top, maybe a little aggressive to say a meltdown in cannabis. But first up, Anthony, you are looking at this industry and more notably the company Curaleaf.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting to see a 5 to 6% pop to the upside today on Curaleaf. On German news, Curaleaf has popped. Boris has usually been vocal on Twitter, and there's been some buzz around the name. I was not expecting to see it close down 12% on 1.4 million shares traded. I'm going to be watching this to see what it does tomorrow. I mean, the spread after market's pretty fat, all things considered. But I mean, if Curaleaf takes another 10% leg down, I mean, I don't want to say that I want to chase it or catch a falling knife, but it'd get pretty attractive pretty quickly.
Yeah. Before we get into our second stock, A reminder, all views on this TDR Trade to Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice, and the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay. Next up, I know, Ben, you were actually talking about just the resistance level. It all starts and ends with MSOs, which get, racks up a bulk of the daily volume within this industry. But what is a key line? We've actually were with Dan, the chart man, that 725 resistance from back in September. Where are we at now, and what should we be watching?
Yeah, that was former resistance that broke through during the September rally, and it came back.
Yeah,
So the significance of that it came back all the way, of course.
I got blown out today.
Oh, got blown out for sure. That level has actually lost its sort of powerful punch or significance when it came back during that rally. So we have, we're working on new support resistance levels as we speak right now. But right now 680 is actually a pretty important one. That was sort of like the first beachhead and pivot point before the market took off, eventually past 10 o'clock on a pre-market basis a few weeks ago. So 680 was key, and I'm with Anthony. I was surprised to see, we had a little pop in the morning, a little play off momentum yesterday, perhaps inspired by Jim Jordan not going through, perhaps not, but the market was oversold and primed to be taken up, and it was yesterday. So we had the pop in the morning, and I was surprised to see it all retrace all the way back as well. We actually broke that 680 level, that the base that had been trying to form a new intermediate bottom, and we closed above that, which is nice. But it just shows that the market is really weak. And when I was looking at some of the component stocks, talking with Cureleaf, for example. Not even at the lows during midday, it was trading at only about a 16.6% higher from when the HHS announced that rescheduling announcement. So it had lost all that way. It had lost over 75% of its closing gains at the height of its move. So all these stocks are coming back quite significantly. Even Canopy Growth, it's only up very marginally since that announcement as well, right?
Canopy Growth is down 14% today. I mean, it's
wow.
The thing that was surprising to me was seeing quality names down, like GTI and Cureleaf. I mean, GTI was down 9%, Cureleaf was down 12%. That's very surprising to me, and I'm not sure why that's going on, which is the hardest part, because it sure as hell is not uncertainty around the Speaker of the House. Why this is happening.
Well,
yeah, I mean, we've retraced some of the best quality names in the industry have retraced almost the entire move. Like, we're only talking about, Cureleaf being up 15% since the HHS announcement. We're talking about.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not too mad about that, as I'm sitting in cash right now and I'm ready to load the boat on a round trip on this. But yes, it's from an optics from an optics perspective, it's not exactly fun to be watching.
It's almost like it never happened. And I know it hasn't happened, so you can't, fully price that in, but it's almost like people forgot that announcement actually took place and that there's a probable event happening, probably sometime next year. Yeah, that's just the state of the markets right now and the state of macro. Small caps are really weak. Risk assets are really weak. So I think it's just more of a byproduct of that, but very frustrating if you're a cannabis investor to watch everything almost round trip, especially, the quality names.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of macro, let's hope Tesla doesn't shit the bed and take the market down with it. That would not be good for that. They got earnings after hours. That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good for anybody involved.
I'm actually watching off my TV off the side, but Capitol Hill's being stormed right now. So there's some macro levels that I think, to answer your questions as to why some of these big name stocks are getting pulled back, there's just things beyond this industry right now that are very volatile, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Ben, you talked about the 680 resistance. I think for some of our viewers that are in education, learning how to be a day trader through their Benzinga Pro subscription, can you talk and maybe elaborate on what that 680 resistance, why it's important?
Yeah, 680 was actually support, and that comes from the first pivot point from I believe the second or third day from the initial move off the HHS announcement. The second or third day, I forget which one, but it created a base there in which it eventually rose past that 725 resistance level, which was the highs of 2023 to date at that time. So it rose to 10, and then it's retraced all the way down to that initial pivot point, which is around that 680 area. So we briefly, went through that today, and then got back up by the close. So that was just an area that could have taken out stops, for example, where you had stop orders, which if it broke that level, were going to take their losses and move out of the market. And I think you saw a brief spike down, but it recovered after that.
So 2 words come to mind: stay tuned, right?
Yeah, stay tuned. I mean, volatile industry. What can you say? Like I said, it's very, very frustrating to be a cannabis investor right now and see everything round trip. But I think most people would have had the expectation that maybe a 50% or a 66% retrace would happen. Fibonacci retrace. But now it's almost the whole thing. We're working on the whole thing almost. And give it a week or two, it might be the whole thing.
Think about managing expectations. It appears, and again, cautiously optimistic, 2024 looks like it could be a viable year for the industry, which is why, as much as we're seeing a pullback, the interest level is never been better in probably 3-4 years as it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we've said when we were talking to Brady, and when we said when we've had guests on the show. I mean, the political will of the establishment is behind the cannabis industry for once, and we got earnings season coming out, which I don't think is going to be bad. To say the least. It's going to be in line to probably light growth.
All right. Next up, you've actually mentioned this company a few times lately, Anthony. Consortium, company out of Florida. Big, strong dispensary retail footprint within the state of Florida, currently ranked number 6 within that state. Some of the debt is owned by GTI. It actually was did it finish in the green on the day?
Yeah, it finished in the green, and it finished about 10 times its average daily volume.
10 times the actual.
Yeah, it's a position of mine. It's the only cannabis stock I'm in right now. I don't know why they're ripping it today, but it traded about 1.5 million shares, finished the day up 3.7% into the green. And I mean, it's one that I'm not watching it from a company perspective, as I've done my diligence and I know the company pretty much inside and out at this point. I'm more so watching the tape to see what's going on around trading.
Yeah, you wonder why.
Around the stock.
I like this story. I'm just surprised that it hasn't gotten more attention for quite some time, but out of nowhere, it's just popped up.
Yeah. I mean, it's number 6 it's number 6 in Florida. Like we said, it's got a strong Florida presence, 33 doors. They're selling plenty of cannabis in Florida. They've got exposure to Texas. It's not a big MSO by any means, but I mean, on an annualized basis, they're doing anywhere between, I think, 82 to 90 million in top line, and they are cash flow positive. They have some debt. I think their debt in full is around $56 million, but much of it is owned by GTI. And as far as, not a lot of it, but I think about a third of it's owned by GTI. And as far as the debt service goes, it's manageable with their free cash.
What a portfolio win that would be for GTI if they acquired something like this and just to step right into the Florida market, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have to be honest, in my own self-interest, I'd much rather that not happen for a while. I'd rather have the stock rip and come to equilibrium at fair value, at least to where it's supposed to, or where it should be valued. Yes, then have GTI come acquired after that.
We all love
not down here in the doldrums.
We all loved Gage Cannabis, and then suddenly Terracin bought him out, which is great move.
I still have my Terracin paper.
Do you?
Yeah. I've got my Terracin paper is not even loaded up. It's in a DRS in my desk. I'm holding that until it goes back to the 8 to 10 range.
Ben, you like this story?
I don't think about selling it.
You like the story, Consortium?
I do like their assets, and their market cap is very low. I haven't done as much diligence as Anthony. He has a relationship with the company from previously, but I guess the cash position is a little light right here, and that might be. So my question would be, are they going to raise at any point, even with the free cash flow? But other than that, 6 in Florida, it looks like a prime acquisition candidate here with an MSO that wants to get into Florida or increase their footprint, because there are some tier ones that aren't even in Florida at all, right? So you could definitely foresee this being some sort of candidate, especially at free cash flow, because all companies want to buy accretive companies.
Yeah. This is the TDR Tradetoblack podcast, our second segment, Daily Movers. We look at stocks and cannabis and psychedelics up or down. We're watching them and what you should basically know and why. Leave a comment below. You like Consortium? You like this company? Do you think the ballot initiative going on next month on November 8th has some sort of inclination as to why this stock is moving? We'd love to hear from you. All right, gents. Basically, let's take a look at the overview as things we're watching heading into tomorrow and for the remainder of the week. Anthony, Ben, we'll begin. Anthony, I guess with you. What are you watching as we head into tomorrow and towards the end of the week?
I'm watching the sector. I'm watching the tape in the sector as a whole tomorrow. I'm going to see. I'm going to watch, like I said, as a whole on how everything's going to open, see what's going on pre-market, and then hopefully this sector doesn't trade like it did today.
Yeah. Ben?
Yeah, I'll be watching to see if we can, stay above 680. I know it's not a major support level. I wouldn't consider it that, but that's just a little benchmark. I mean, if we're trading below 680, we can't really claim to be very strong. And it might be, a short elevator ride to 630 if, we see weakness in the morning, right? So,
yeah.
Other than that, I want to see if some of these component companies retrace all the way. I mean, that would be quite outstanding. Not in a good way, but quite amazing is more the word. And then it might be time to start, picking at some of these stocks as they get, lower and lower. And, you have to be careful for tax loss season, but as well. But I mean, HHS, as far as I know, is still on the table and still looking likely.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
If you get a round trip, you consider that perhaps a good opportunity to add.
Earnings seasons around the corner. We will have that comprehensive coverage for you, the viewer, here on the TDR Traded Black podcast and the Benzinga TV network. As well, as I said, I was actually in Toronto this morning for the official announcement with Verano beginning trading on CBOE. Had a one-on-one interview with Aaron Miles. That's actually over on our YouTube channel, The Dales Report, right now that you could see to break down what this announcement means and obviously the uplisting, what it means, and expectations on what the company is looking at over the next 30 to 60 days. So you'll find that interesting. Leave your feedback, leave your comments below as we wrap up this podcast here today, guys. Just a quick recap. When we look at the first segment, not a meltdown within the overall industry, but overall, we had some volatile times to say the least today trading.
Yeah.
No, we did.
Yeah.
Part of the course though, right?
Yeah. So a recap, Germany is some ways heating up. We had the Verano listing as well. What was some of the other stuff that we discussed? We also touched on small pharma and basically the acquisition of Cybin, the 5-year anniversary of federal legalization of cannabis. Some good stories that you guys shared. And then a couple of companies that we're watching closely, Cureleaf, which was down quite a bit today, Consortium, which saw over 1 million shares traded, which was huge volume for them to say the least. And then as well, actually, one company we forgot to touch on. Did we touch on Canopy Growth? I know that you said they were down, 14%?
No, we didn't touch on Canopy Growth. We can get into that probably tomorrow. Or
later this week.
See what it's trading. Yeah.
All right, gents. Well, happy trading. Hope you guys found this information helpful, to say the least. But here at TDR, the Traded Black podcast, we bring you all the insight and knowledge towards cannabis and psychedelics, giving you market coverage, comprehensive approach with obviously our two thought leaders, Benjamin A. Smith and Anthony Varela. Good day, guys, and we'll check back in with you later this week.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.